Okay, let's do it. Let's do the thing. Welcome to the State of the WIP, the end of the year WIP roundup, the parade of WIPs. I'm gonna go through my big bucket of WIPs, but before that, this is actually take two, so I've already pulled off all the stuff on my desk behind me, but part one is going through all the stuff that's not even in the WIP bin. And I ran out of hard drive space while I was recording, so the file got corrupted, so 20 minutes of genuine reactions to discoveries of crap that's been on my desk for months, gone. Sorry. So, let's get into it. For things that are not in my WIP box, the bin of WIPs. My newest WIP. This is Jocelyn's cowl, still ongoing, done out of yarn, from Fireweed Fiber Co's Advent Calendar, so if you don't want spoilers, look away now. I have just talked about this on the podcast, but this is your warning. It's blue, there. I keep talking about it on the podcast. I will keep talking about it on the podcast, so we're not going to talk about it right now. We are also not really going to talk about Mr. Diana's socks, because those keep showing up on the podcast. But we can briefly talk about my scrappy socks. Scrappy, whatever. Scrap yarn in stripes as socks. I have a bowl full of scrap yarn here, destined to become the rest of this sock, another sock. I believe I got to the point of attempting the mock short row heel on the sock, and then I messed it up somehow, even though it's a very easy heel. I completely messed it up, and then I needed the needles for something else. So, hey, you know what? I didn't even put this on waste yarn because this yarn's just grippy enough. There's no waste yarn in this. It's just hanging out. That's cool. So that's on my desk. Let me just slightly reassemble the disaster. And then this is a WIP to be shortly. My dad requested socks out of the pretty blue yarn. Ostensibly they're Christmas socks, but they're going to be Christmas and January socks is what they're going to be. He knows this. He's fine with that. Okay. That was everything that was on my desk. Then I started pulling off the loose objects on the desk behind me. This is basically a finished object. This is my mom's hat for Christmas. This is out of Loops and Threads, Charisma, Tweed. It is done. The ends are woven in. I just need to trim the ends and attach a pom-pom, and this is done. It's even washed and dried. Like, literally snip, snip, and attach. I'm going to attach this to a button so that it can be easily removed for washing purposes. So that's barely a WIP. Then also a Christmas present, we have the sweater for my brother's cat. Gilbert is a black cat, so this gold sweater should show up quite nicely, and he does actually wear sweaters. I'm actually so excited to throw the cat in where the snow... I don't know if we're actually going to have snow on Christmas, honestly. It keeps hovering around 0. We may or may not have snow at Christmas, but I'm very excited to throw a cat in a sweater in the snow. I think that's going to be really cute. And that's just impeccable in gold, I believe. That was it for loose items. Then there's this big rainbow ladybug bag that's normally there. This is my craft off for the month, so I'm not going to talk about that. But in here I've got the tiny bit of my back panel for the 4 cardigan. Yeah, I haven't made any progress on that. In theory, that's done in less than 20 days. And I still have to do the rest of the back panel, 2 front panels, and 2 sleeves, and sew it all together. Is that going to get done in less than 20 days? While I do Christmas presents, and host my parents, and not fall terribly far behind on the MCAL? No, that's okay. Anyway, this yarn is Briggs and Little Regal? Heritage? I don't remember. The rest of the yarn is in a box over there. I could look at a ball band, and I'm not going to. This will continue to show up on the podcast, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. The other thing that is in this bag is the No Longer Mystery Knit-Along. I should get closer to the microphone, shouldn't I? The No Longer Mystery Knit-Along from Stephen West, the Twists and Turns MCAL. It's out of more Fireweed Fiber Co. yarn. Then it's sparkly. You can only really see it on camera in this dark color, but it is all this sparkly. Good grief, that like glows. That'll get done one day. Then there's a zippered pouch in the middle here, and I had a genuinely delightful time in the corrupted file digging through that to discover a little boba stitch marker with that has a Starbucks logo for reasons, even though Starbucks definitely doesn't sell boba. And I found my ostentatiously, ridiculously large Progress Keeper that is coffee and donuts. Oh, come on. Why? There we go. Coffee and donuts. And I found a bunch of Kiviot Floof. Because who doesn't just have random Kiviot Floof? That was it for stuff in the bag. But then also on the desk I found some candy. This one's a dinosaur. Kind of matches my sweater. I have a sweater that's purple and red, like this dinosaur. I could really match. Anyway, this candy's been sitting there since I bought it at Blue Mountain in February. So that's great. And then I also found a dinosaur ruler. It moves. Ooh. Yeah, so the writing on the back indicates that I used it in 6th grade. So that came home with me the last time I was visiting my parents. And then I have The Traveler is my co-pilot bumper sticker from Critical Role. That's other random crap that's on my desk. I also have a stack of 7 interweave knits. Ow, that's actually really dense. A stack of 7 unread interweave knits magazines. So I will not be renewing my subscription to that because apparently I don't read magazines anymore. Oh, and then hiding in this corner on the floor is the Patchwork Cardigan, the Crochet Patchwork Cardigan. That's a bunch of squares of varying textures that just need to get sewn together. Literally the squares are all done. They're even partially sewn together. I just need to finish them sewing them together. And then I even have the yarn to the cuffs and all the edges and everything. This is just impeccable in navy. Just look how well that's gonna be nice. So it's so close to being done. Is it going to be done before the end of the year? No, of course not. And I'm pretty sure this was on last year's State of the WIP. So that's great. We're doing great. I think this is the first thing to show up that was on last year's State of the WIP. There will be more of those, I'm sure. Okay, the next thing is what's in this bag. Don't forget to knit. Don't forget to knit indeed. I've forgotten about everything in this bag. There's stuff in the pouch in this bag. What is in the pocket of this bag? Oh! Business cards that I forgot to bring to Edmonton. Because if I just packed this bag, I would have had business cards. Because this is a perfectly logical place to keep the business cards for the podcast. Because, you know, wouldn't you bring your giant branded tote to a podcasting event? But I didn't. And that's why I didn't have business cards. Oh, okay. This is last month's craft off, the Cobra sweater. I'm not going to talk about it again because it was literally just on Sunday's episode. But that's in there. What else is in here? Oh, that's actually only one other project in here. Oh, that's a swatch. Okay, that's fine. That's a swatch for that sweater. But the other thing I've got in here is... Oh, that's what that spare ball band was for that I found earlier. I'm like, what colorway does that go with? It goes with this purple colorway. For the Zelda socks? Yeah, these were Zelda socks. That was it. These are Intense Colorwork socks. I believe the pattern was free, and it's by Lattes and Llamas. And I love it, and I will finish it. I think I just got annoyed by the heel. The heel was really intense, because I don't normally do a heel flap and gusset to begin with. And then I think I did it a little bit wrong, so I had to, like, fudge my numbers just a little bit. And then, like, I had to fudge the chart on... There's even a chart on the bottom, by the way. Like, these socks are intense. The color work's on the... I guess it makes sense there's color work on the bottom so that the yarn can go all the way around. But these are intense! So those will get done one day. Probably. One day, probably. I've got a spare skein of the purple because I wasn't sure I was going to have enough. Okay, let me put this disaster back in here. I'm attempting to contain this disaster while I do this because last year I didn't do that. And good grief, my floor was an atrocity at the end. I'm going to do a quick shuffle around and make sure I haven't forgotten anything that's not in the bin. Nope, that's not crafts, that's the rest of the yarn for cardigan. That we've already talked about. We're not even touching repairs. I mean, I guess I could talk about spinning briefly. I don't even know what's going on out here anymore. Very briefly, we have some Targhee bamboo silk on... Oh, the colorway is Johnny Jump Up. It's from Fireweed Fabric Co. Doing that on a drop spindle. That is a spindle that is empty and cold. This is some Polworth on my electric eel wheel. The Polworth is from Cloud9 Fiberworks. I'll finish that one day, probably. And on my Jelligan, or Scottish drop spindle, I have apparently started some 100% superwash merino fluffy top in the colorway Imaginary Friend. Why have my screens gone off? Turn back on, screens. Okay, good, we're still recording, but I'm absolutely reliant on this one screen to be my light, my nice diffuse light. I literally just opened... I just have a blank notepad file open, that is my light. It's a professional operation in here. Yeah, so it's like a grayish blue with some pinks and yellows. It's very soft. I'll finish that one day, maybe. Probably. No, I will. I definitely will. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna put some stuff back on my desk. I don't know what to do with this fluff. Oh, it's so nice, this fluff, this little Kivia fluff. It's so nice. So good. Put that over there. Oh, ow! I pulled my own hair. That's great. Professional operation up in here. We are so professional. The professionalist. Gotta move this. Okay, you can hang out up here. And, okay, little plant, you gotta move too. And, oh, batteries. Those don't need to be out. Put those away. Into the drawer of... Don't ask. Delicate operation. Oh my god, this is heavy. Ooh. That was a little dubious there for a second. Yeah. Okay. On top of the stack, in a teacups bag, we have the Hufflepuff mitten, the dreaded Hufflepuff mitten. I think this also might have been on last year's State of the WIP. Still here. Still gonna finish it. The intended recipient has now changed. It'll get done eventually. This is Loops and Threads Wool-like. And I've also... Excuse me, as I punch the microphone with the ball of yarn. I've also got the colors for a Ravenclaw pair in here. The blue and silver, not the book accurate blue and bronze. I'm doing the movie blue and silver because the contrast was better. Also, they didn't have a good bronze color. So, that's still in progress. I think the pattern, if you're interested, is, I believe it's just called HP. Okay, there's one thing. What's this thing? Oh! I was inspired very briefly a few months ago. Several people on our Patreon Discord were making the Asa cowl, and I went, hey, that would lend itself really well to my hand spun. So I started it, and I think I got like 4 rows in. Let's see if I can get this close enough to actually show that texture. Look at that texture. Also, this is where all my light bulb stitch markers went. That's good to know. So I think I'm still going to do that, because I've been wanting to make something out of my hand spun for ages, and I still think that this is a good thing to do that with. Yeah. This is the hand spun in question, by the way. It's white with a little bit of gray. I believe the braid also had some flecks of like yellow and gold in it. It was lichen kind of colored. It was supposed to be, I believe the colorway was Storm in the Castle. So it was supposed to be like castle walls with lichen and stuff, but when it spun up, it just basically turned into a perfectly lovely, slightly marled gray and white. Which will make a lovely, big, squishy, neutral colored cowl at some point in its life. Other thing. What's in this bag? I literally don't even know. Ball cozy. Ball cozy. Oh! This is my medic hat that I started making because I was generating Instagram content and my nails were blue and I had a blue crochet hook and I found some blue yarn and I went, oh, that's pretty. And I'm like, well, gosh darn, this is so pretty. I need to, actually start this project now. So this is going to be a slouchy beanie. I think this is a free pattern. I'm 90%, no, I'm absolutely certain that the medic hat is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's, some kind of ribbing, and then a bunch of single and half double crochets, and I'm I added in the sock mini stripe on the texture change stripe. The original pattern only calls for one color, but I wanted to use the mini, so there. So I still like that. I'm still going to do that. I even got, because the lady at Two Piece Hooking is so nice, she sent me one of her cute little ergonomic hooks in the size that I need to work on this hat. So the next time I work on this hat, I'm going to have a cute little Pac-Man. Which is not the nice matchy blue hook that I started with, but you know what? It's a Pac-Man. And therefore it's better. That's that. This is just the stuff that's sitting on top of the bin. Okay, I have a Black Widow project bag. What is in here? Oh, there's a paper pattern in here. Oh! Because this is yarn and a pattern that I bought at my first ever Manitoba Fiber Festival back in like 2014 or something like that. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I got this like red-brown... Focus on the yarn and not my face, please. It's sort of like a burgundy and a bluey teal. And I was using it to make these cabled fingerless gloves. They're the Contours mitts, I believe. Ooh, this pattern came out in 2012. I might have bought this earlier than 2014. Anyway, these have been on hold for an embarrassing amount of time. I think these might have been in progress last year. And these are still the oldest thing that I bought the yarn and the pattern for, and I still want them. Just not as much as I want other things, apparently. I'm very like, squirrel! Or new shiny thing! And distracted, and then it's terrible having a podcast because I can justify anything by like, psh, it's podcast content! It's actually terrible how often I justify things like that in my own head. It's podcast content. We have a coffee bag. This is brown. Oh, it's the Maple Leaf Shawl. I believe this was the podcast anniversary for this year for wood. Yep. And I did not get very far in this lace weight yarn. I'm holding it what will ultimately be upside down, but it will be a giant maple leaf shape. This is so soft. I forgot how soft this was. Oh my god. I need the ball band. Hang on. I believe this had like silk or some such in it. 50% silk, 50% merino. Lace weight. It's so soft. And it's going to be a gorgeous leafy color in a gorgeous leafy shape. One day. Eventually. You can see I've got the little... Just got the little points. Oops. Just got the little points. Ta-da, little point. I began the shaping. Ugh. So that was obviously an absolute utter fail for the podcast anniversary for 5 years. That is another thing that I don't want to frog. I do still want that. I'm just not in a lace knitting place. It's not even that lacy, the fact that you have to count. I haven't been in a counting mood. Okay, I'll do one more, and then I'll call this part 1. One more small bag, because then we get into the big bags. Then I really don't know what they are, because they're lower down. So, in Curse Your Sudden But Inevitable Betrayal. Oh! They're the Diana socks. I believe I have 1.5 socks. I do, in fact, have an entire Diana sock by Nikki Knits, which will eventually be my first lace pair of socks, with a cute little cawl running right up the back. Oh, this matches my shirt today. That was unplanned. God, I really gotta finish this. Oh, yep. So I have a whole sock and a cuff. And then I recalled that I wanted the needles for something, and I ran away with them. to do something else. And this is out of more Fireweed Fiber Co. yarn, because I have a problem. This is such a gorgeous sock. Can I just like snap my fingers and have the rest of this sock? Maybe this is my Christmas Day not cast on, but like, if I can just knit all of Christmas Day, can I have a whole sock? And then I can just have a new pair of socks on Christmas Day? Because I was going to cast on socks anyway, but if I could just like pick up a pair of socks instead that are almost done, that'd be pretty great. Alright. Those are the smallerish bags that were perched on top of the bin. We still have the entire contents of the bin to go. And we're getting into the depths of I do not know what's in there. So I'm going to call this the end of part 1. Come back in 2 weeks for part 2, where we dive into the depths.